that paragraph 2b, for instance, is the one on which he relies for that it asks for the determination of the status of the marriages the king entered into with other queens. And they responded also, they have responded to this, and they argued that no, that has never been an issue before this court, because according to them, the applicant queen does not ask for that relief. Therefore, there's no need to deal with it at all. So the relevant paragraph reads as follows. During its entire existence, the marriage in paragraph 2a above was subject to the Marriage Act number 25 of 1961, and all subsequent customary unions celebrated or entered into by the late His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini were precluded by the existing civil marriage to Her Majesty Queen Sbongile Zulu. So that's the only paragraph. This paragraph 2b of the notice of motion. That's the only paragraph which deals with the status of the subsequent marriages. But in the notice of motion, there's nowhere it is categorically spelled out that the determination of the validity of these marriages is one of the relief sought. But Mr. Redman said we should read into this word precluded. That would mean that the validity of the subsequent marriages is at stake. And for that reason, this court must determine the validity of the marriages in question. But in contrast to that, the applicant queen herself has clearly conceded in her affidavit that these marriages are recognized now by the Recognition of Marriages Act. And if that finds support in the affirmance she made in her affidavit, where she says she does not want the friction or ructions in the royal family, to such an extent that she does not want these other queens to be evicted from the palaces they presently occupy. Even their children or the children of the king should be treated equally, whether born of a civil or customary union or marriage. So that clearly shows that the omission of that relief was not a mistake, but it was deliberate. And also, in paragraph So there's nowhere, sorry, there's nowhere in the papers where she clearly asked for that relief. But if you take into account what I've said, one may reasonably come to the conclusion that that was not a mistake, but deliberately omitted because she doesn't want the friction in her family or in the royal family. And I've been referred to paragraph, page 37, paragraph 66 of the papers. I think that is volume 1, where she says the following, 36. Is it 36? No, sorry, 37. Well, but the verse is paragraph 65 by Mr. Redman. This paragraph reads as follows. By virtue of the nature of our marriage, Sila was not legally capable of permitted in law to enter into any other marriage while our civil marriage existed. We have never been divorced, and we remain married to each other in common of property until the death of the late Isilo. But Mr. Madonsela, for the respondent, took this thing further, this argument further, to paragraph 66 of the very same affidavit. Paragraph 66 reads as follows. If he was unable and not permitted in law to marry, the unions between the late Isilo and the first to the fifth respondents are only recognized to the extent of the recognition of Customary Marriage Act 120 of 1998. This also adds to what is being said, and that though she does not accept that she is no longer entitled to the half share in terms of, or by virtue of her marriage, but she doesn't raise any query with the status of these other marriages. What she wants here is the declaration of her rights rather than fighting others. Because if it has been clear that there's any relief sought with regard to the validity of the marriages, it is now alleged, I really don't think that the other queens will not oppose to that. Well, some of them, they have elected to abide, knowing that this is not the case. They have to answer. Even those who have come to court, they did not know that is the case they are going to answer here. And I've been referred to paragraph 414 by Matonsela, the Council for the second, 6, and 12 respondent. In paragraph 137, where it is stated as follows, I think this is if I'm not mistaken, is replying, is an answering affidavit. It's too long, I don't know where it starts. Yeah, this is termed composite answering affidavit, where Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi says, I know that the applicant Queen does not seek any other declaring any order declaring the King's customary marriage as invalid. So, in the replying affidavit, there's nothing pertinently said about that. In the replying affidavit, at page 582, there's nothing pertinently said because he categorically states that, or he touches upon the validity of these marriages. But if that has been an issue all along, one would have expected that to be pertinently addressed in answering affidavit. Instead, what is being said at paragraph 62, the recognition of customary marriage act does not come to the rescue and is no refuge to the proposition that Prince Buthelezi wants this court to accept or that he advances as propositions of law to the facts. It's not clear what is dealing with. Because if that was the case that the validity of this marriage is an issue, one will expect that in the replying affidavit to state categorically that no, we are making a mistake. The validity of this marriage is an issue, and as a result, I seek a relief that this court should determine and make a finding on their validity. And there's a stage where they indicated quite clearly that the applicant Queen is not clear on the issue. But that clarity was never brought up. And I myself, I've never understood the papers calling upon me to determine and make a finding on the validity of the marriage, subsequent marriage. Up until today, or up until I read the heads of argument of the applicant Queen, and I realized that this is now put in through the back door, because that is not supported by the papers. Mr. Topping also has echoed the argument of Mr. Madonsela in this regard, that none of them has understood this to be one of the relief sought. So one could say maybe that was an oversight on the part of the African king not to mention this categorical. But if she doesn't want friction and ruction, as she says, how she will do this? And of course, on one hand, she said, no, I don't want even these other queens to be evicted from their palaces. I also want their children to be treated equal as mine, irrespective of the marriages. And she concedes that in terms of the Customary Law or Customary Recognition Act, recognized. So if you balance now the two, it becomes clear or quite evident that is not the relief she seeks. And it's only now she seeks elder relief. So in the light of what I've said, of course Mr. Redman has argued that the respondents have been under the impression that now these marriages are dissolved by death. But if you are clear, look at 403, paragraph 112, where Prince Telezi clearly indicated that less clarity, as I've said earlier on. But she had an opportunity to clarify that, which did not happen. That is also add to what I've said, that these are the indicators that that's not the relief she sought. That page 403, 112, just the first sentence. The relief that the African queen seeks lacks clarity. I did not go further than that. And when she responded to this thing, she did not address that. I've dealt with that already. I have also been referred to paragraph 572, page 572, where 572, that was paragraph 33, that this paragraph reads as follows. First, the other queens, with greatest respect to them, when they decided to be involved with the late Isilo, they knew that he was married. Accordingly, they were aware and reconciled themselves to the fact that their union could, at some point, face a challenge relating to validity. But there's no where the challenge is made to validity of these marriages. So to read something into it will not be appropriate. Because my understanding of this is that she wants 50% of the estate. She does not take them into consideration in that respect only. that is entitled to a share. What the king does with his share of other 50%, that will be his own endeavor. So what she concentrates on is F52, is the protection of her 50%. By so saying does not mean that whether these marriages are valid or invalid, but these are the marriages who have been there for some time. About more than 30 years or 40, they've been there. They cannot be wished away. And now, and it's clear that she doesn't want these people to be treated somehow rudely or kicked out of the palaces, and their children also be disinherited, whatever. She's not concerned with all that. What she's concerned with is her portion of the estate. That's what is borne by the papers. Therefore, I rule that nowhere in the papers or in the founding, nor in the replying affidavit, or in the notice of motion, where this court is called upon to determine and make a finding on the validity of the subsequent marriages of the king with other queens. So then the rolling over of the matter until tomorrow in this regard is refused.
azikho emthethweni ngenxa yomshado azifaka kubona yena nenkosi-ke noma-ke isilo sesaphuthana-ke la ngenxa yomshado woqobo lwesilungu sibiza umshado-ke esivile ukuphila ngokomthetho-ke ukuchaze noma ngokweyisekelo zabo bachaze ukuthi lo mshado ongasagunyazi ukuthi-ke inkosi-ke noma isilo-ke singakwazi ukuthi siphinde-ke sithathe amanye amakhosikazi-ke lana amanye asekhona kodwa-ke kafukuke singachaza nokuthi ngokwenkantolo ethi yacubungula-ke la ichaze njengokuthi-ke izizathu noma-ke amaphuzu athe avezwa ukusekela la ngokwamaphepha awekho ayantela abukho bephatheka obekusekela lezi iy'celo ezithe zafakwa-ke la ngoba uze uthi mhlawumbe kungenzeka ukuthi-ke ithiba leli-ke likaNdlunkulu ngiyokazi-ke la kuyiyona-ke fake lesi sicelo lapha ekuqaleni ukuthi kungenzeka ukuthi kube khona nje isithe lezinto abangazange bazicacise ngoba uma ngabe usulandelela noma ukuthi uyabheka-ke la ngokwamaphepha lathi afakwa phambi kwenkantolo kukhona impilo abadala noma kukhona ukushayisana kwezinto ethe zashiwo ngoba uma ulandelela futhi kukhona okuveziwe-ke lapho yona-ke intokazi-ke ngokomlomo noma ngaloko kuchazwe-ke inkosi umntwana uMangosuthu uyacacisa ukuthi-ke ekuziphenduleleni-ke kwendlunkulu noma-ke kwendlovukazi yondlunkulu uthe akaphikisani yena noma uyakwemukela lephuzu lokuphela kwase kukhona oza kwabo noma umthetho uyagunyaza ukuthi labo oza kwabo-ke babe sebekhona ukubheka ngokomthetho wesintu kuphela njengoba phela nabo bebeshadile nanokuthi futhi uma ubheka intenza futhi ukuthi kube nokuthi-ke kunokudideka kwayena kuzisekelo zakhe akacacisile ngoba phela uthi uma ecacisa yena hhayi ukuthi-ke kunokuphikisana kokuthi umshado yalaboza kwabo lezi ezinye izintokazi uma ngabe ethi azingabhekelele umshado wabo ukuthi mabakhishwe lapha esigodlweni okanye abantwana laba basekhosini kube ukuthi indlela abazophathwa ngayo bese baphathwe ngendlela eyahlukene uthi phela abantwana futhi baphathwe ngokulingana njengoba phela amazinyane esilo phela bazophathwa-ke ngokulinganayo kanjalo nondlunkulu laba bamlamayo abaphathwe ngokulinganayo manje-ke yilapho phela inkantolo nayo ibe siyasho ukuthi cha ukubheka izisekelo zayo indlunkulu ziyantenga noma azelele ukhuluma into ephikisanayo kanti phela sizwile kulaba abaphendulile noma abameli la ngoba phela-ke ikhona-ke insizwa ke la noma inkosana yamadodela sizwile iphakamiseni omele abaphikisana lesi sicelo ngoba phela iyakhahlela yama ngenyawo zombili ukuthi cha ummeli-ke lo omele-ke undlunkulu uthe ezethulweni zakhe athi ayiveza phambi kwenkantolo kodwa ushaye ingxenye kwangase aqhubeka nokuthi abheke phela nanempendulo leke kaNdlunkulu ukuthi uNdlunkulu ubekade etheni nanokuthi phela manje uma usubheka kule minyaka emingaka kuhleliwe bevele bemukeliwe laba bathatha nabo bethathela-ke esikweni kwazi ukuthi-ke isilo siyakhothama njengokusho kwayo incwadi yeNdlovukazi njengoba ichaza ukuthi belokhu yabakhona emshadweni kuwumshado yona lo wesilungu obowuvimba ukuthi isilo singagcagceka abanye oNdlunkulu wahlala kwazi ukuthi-ke kuba bahlukaniswa-ke unkulu lokhu phela sikubeka ngokusobala ukuthi ngibona uma ngabe inkantolo isimenywa ukuthi ayiyobheka leya mshado ibheka ngaphansi kwamaphuzu maphi ikuphi ukuvezwa-ke manje inkantolo ingahlehla ibuyele emuva lokhu phela sokusho kusobala phela manje sekuwumlando-ke manje echaze ukuthi ngempela-ke izathu azikho noma singabeka ukuthi ithimba lelaNdlunkulu alizange licubungisise kahle noma libheke ukuze lisekele ngoba phela inkantolo-ke manje-ke ishaya isithola ungumphotho kulokhu yakuthi ngempela okuyikona kufuneka ngithi uma ngihlehla ngiyohlehla ngibhidiza leya mshado ngithi ayisekho iminyaka beyivele le mshado asifuni ngemshado mhlawumbe ngonyaka owodwa lomnyaka emibili yiminyaka kwagcama bekhona lana amanye amakhosikazi bekhona bemukeliwe naye futhi bomukele ukuthi-ke uyabazi njengoba futhi vele esho cha mina angibisana labanye oNdlunkulu ukuthi ngithi abakhishwe baphelelwe ingodlo noma kube ukuthi waphela sesithi-ke manje lokho sokwenza ukuthi phela manje inkantolo ithi-ke angizwa kahle manje wena uzofaka isicelo sokuthi mina angibhidlize le mishado ngaziphi izathu uma ngabe uthi wena futhi egcinela awufuni ukulwa ngoba phela le nto iyimpi uma ngabe kuyimpi-ke veza umaphuzu ingakho-ke inkantolo besithi yabona nakule sicelo akade sebesiveza ngasohlangathini-ke laNdlunkulu ukuthi-ke bacela ukuthi lenkantolo kuyiyona engamele lolu daba ayigudlule noma ayinikwe ikhefu ukuze kunikwe omunye umehluleli ngezizathu zokuthi yayithamele omunye womgaqo wesilo lapho kwakade inkosi esiyakhothama isilo sasikade sigcagcelwa ukamafu inkantolo ekade ikhona lapho izathu azange vezwe manje kusho ukuthi lesi sicelo sebebesifaka sokuthi bacela ukuthi inkantolo abhuqe ukuze bakwazi ukuyocubungula uzofaka isicelo sokuthi-ke umehluleli wethu kuze kuthathwe omunye umehluleli inkantolo besichitha-ke ngezinyawo zombili-ke lesi sicelo. Thank you.
My Lord, the position that we're in at the moment is obviously your Lordship has dealt with a substantial portion of the Queen's application in making your Lordship's ruling, in the sense that your Lordship has found that the question of the validity of the marriages is not pertinently before the court. My instructions, my Lord, are to seek an amendment. I need to formulate the amendment. It will take about just a couple of minutes. It basically will be to assert a specific challenge to the validity of the King's marriages to the first to fifth respondents. My Lord, might I just mention, in your Lordship's ruling, your Lordship suggested, or your Lordship found that certain of the Queens had not opposed this application, or had merely agreed to abide the court's decision. That is in fact not the correct position as I understand it. My Lord, all the Queens are in fact represented, and all the Queens have in fact opposed the application. Indeed, they have signed confirmatory affidavits confirming that the defences raised by them are those which are contained in the answering affidavit which was deposed to by Prince Buthelezi. My Lord, the Lordship will find that For an example is the affidavit of Queen Sbongile, which your Lordship will find at page 516. And there's paragraph 6 and 7 of that affidavit. So just for clarity's sake, just to indicate that they are all before the court, they are all opposed, and we will be seeking to amend the relief to insert, just to clarify that Prayer 2D insofar as your Lordship finds that it doesn't properly articulate the relief that we're seeking, to challenge the validity of the marriages. My Lord, if I might mention, these issues are fully canvassed in the heads of argument, and they've been dealt with by my learned friends in their argument. So there is no prejudice to the Queen's if this argument is actually ventilated at this stage. And it also emerges clearly from the papers which have been filed in the matter. My Lord, I would ask just to stand down for 5 minutes so we can just formulate the amendment. I'll do it, if with your Lordship's leave, I will just do a handwritten note.
To turn the court down.
Just literally 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes. Okay. The court adjourns?
All right, we're going to come out of those court proceedings where they're taking a short recess. That's all from the On Point team. SA Today will have more news for you at the top of the hour. Have a pleasant afternoon.